And it begins. Hi there. Welcome, everybody. It's not Wednesday this week, as I mentioned. The YouTube Live was postponed for this week. So I can only especially thank anybody who is kind enough to show up here on Thursday evening once again, to discuss cast iron, of which, as you see, we've got plenty to talk about, and basically to just chill and have some fun here on YouTube Live. Much like we do on Wednesdays as well. I don't like to make a habit of doing these, of delaying this until Thursday, because I realize that not everybody can be here the way they can on Wednesday. So again, thank you very much to everyone for for being here tonight. Like I see right now in the chat, we've got John A. Waring and Kimberly Miller, William Hurt and Papa Dan and Clico and John Agan. So yes, again, hello to everybody. Once again for as I said, for a cast iron chat, and this time, well, yeah, I'm wearing a sweatshirt here tonight because, yeah, we here in New York, we're about to be hit by that same cold snap that's hit other areas of the country this week. It's not going to be quite as bad for us as some of you folks have. Right now, the temperature is heading down to the single digits. By this time tomorrow night, I understand we are going to be below zero. I understand we may make it to like maybe 5 or 10 below. Which is not the same as the 20 or 30 below that some of you folks have had there in the Midwest, and you certainly have my condolences, and you can have it. So, the temperature here in my living room is about 67 or so, which is nice. I probably don't even need this sweatshirt. The heat has kept the temperature in the mid to upper 60s here in my home, so things have been doing pretty good. And again, hello to everyone, and hello to Rick Stumbow, who took his mom shopping. Well, that was nice of you. How much cast iron will be seasoned to keep it warm? Yeah, that's a good question, actually. I mean, yeah, tomorrow night, probably would be a good time to season some cast iron. Although I'm also thinking of doing some cooking. Put together a video on an Italian dish that not as many people know about as they should, and that would be steak pizzaiola. If you, I mean, Naturally in Italy, of course, you've got to have everything with your tomatoes and pasta sauce, and that includes steak. So basically, yes, it is steak cooked in pizza sauce. And that is indeed one of those Italian dishes that, for some reason, even though people love pizza and they love steak, not many people seem to know about it. So there's a good chance to do something about that. Been ice here since Monday morning, and oh, so cold. Yes, indeed. Um, yeah, rainy day got you into a coma. I'm sorry about that, but well, as I said, right now at least we can kick back and relax and chat some about cast iron this Thursday evening. Because, as I said, we've got plenty to go around here, folks. I mean, I'm I enjoy really telling stories about my cast iron because, well, not only is it personal, but also I'm hoping it's entertaining because there's a lot there's a lot to go around here. And somebody mentions here where we've got yeah, honey badger. I've cleaned up 5 pans and a long griddle in the past week. Rocket Caver, we found a 6 wedge BSR cornbread pan last weekend. Well, congratulations, and I hope you didn't wait. I hope you didn't pay too much for it. Yeah, the funny thing about those 6 wedge pans is that they often sell for more than the more common 8 wedge pan, because it is considered to be more of a rare item. Which is interesting because apparently the reason why it's more rare was because it didn't sell as well in the first place. So now I guess that makes it a collector's item. Well, pretty much, of course, antique vendors will consider anything to be a collector's item as long as as long as it helps them to sell it. So, yeah, the Sweet on the Lodge. And hello, Strong Adventures. Hello, Brian Woods. How do you clean a non-seasoned cast iron skillet without ruining it? Well, that's pretty easy. I mean, if it's non-seasoned, well, then obviously we're going to have to season it. So you could very well just simply strip it down to the bare metal and then work your way up. In fact, I posted a video on my Facebook, which was from TikTok. I did not post it on YouTube Shorts tonight. Someone, or at least not yet, I probably should. Someone on TikTok was asking for advice. She had found a pan that apparently had been buried in her backyard for about 3 decades or so. So the thing was beyond rusty. It was you've seen how some old pans have this dirty color to them. And she was in that point and was looking for advice on how to clean it up. So I took a few seconds to give some very basic advice, and that would be first, soak it in lye for a couple of weeks, whether that would be doing the method of oven cleaner in a trash bag, or you could get a bucket and build yourself a very nice, simple lye bath. Either way, that would be my first step. Even before stripping off the rust, I would first want to strip the crud off of that pan, and a lye soak for maybe a couple of weeks or so is probably the best way to start, at least in my opinion. You could build an e-tank, or if you have an electrolysis setup, well, then obviously that's the way to go. But especially for a lot of folks who are just getting started on this, or they only have one pan, it may be more than an effort than that to actually do an electrolysis setup. So I would say just that. Just have some patience. Clean, yeah, again, soak it in lye for a couple of weeks, and then after that you can dunk it in a solution of vinegar and water. Most people seem to go with 50% vinegar and water for a while to get rid of any residual rust. And then it's just a matter of using some elbow grease. And you really don't, and it won't be as much as you think it might, to then just actually clean the pan up. And here's where you can use dish soap, in fact, to clean your pan. Or even my favorite cast iron cleaner, Barkeeper's Friend. But anyway, those 3 steps, you should, and I say should, have yourself a pan that's been stripped to the bare metal, and then from there, you just go through the seasoning process. So, as for how to clean a non-seasoned cast iron pan, well, that would be my advice. Granted, I didn't see your pan, and it's really kind of a generic answer, but I would say it should apply in just about any situation here. And Alma Wasilewski says, I have a lye tank in my bathroom. Oh, there's a sign of cast ironitis if I've ever heard one, I guess I could say. So, and Terry Sinchav, mine one below now and 14 below by morning, but it's okay because it'll be 32 degrees on Saturday. Yeah, 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 you're doing better than me there. So, um, and likewise as well, need to go hunting again, says Fisherman. Yeah, well, with this cold weather going on, I think we're gonna have to put the hunt on hold for at least a couple of days anyway. Handsome Stone checking out York, Pennsylvania Fairgrounds tomorrow with the wife to keep me in check. Yeah, I know. Again, it's just like that about cast ironitis. Can you talk about the kettle and lid behind you? Okay, you are talking about this one here. This, in fact, is a poki. That is a South African-made cast iron Dutch oven. Well, actually, now this is made in Asia and imported into South Africa, and then from there imported into the United States. But yeah, this these are very popular because, oh man, is this thing heavy? By the way, it is way heavier and thicker than you might see in a large Dutch oven. But yeah, these things are really popular because of their design, because they look so much like old style medieval cauldrons. And this thing is definitely a Dutch oven, and as I said, really, it's really, really thick and heavy too. This particular one here is 8 liters in size. Remember, using the metric system, which would make it which would make it about 9 quarts in size, roughly here in the U.S. So yeah, I've it's really great for well, what can you say? It's a Dutch oven. I use it for stovetop cooking. I've cooked it over a fire. I've cooked it in the oven, and it will if you have a like say about an 8 quart Dutch oven, it will work just as well. But nonetheless, again, the design of this is really what the appeal is. The interesting thing as well is how, oh, Poiki, by the way, Yeah, that's how it's actually pronounced, and I know from people in South Africa who corrected my pronunciation. I mean, it has a name that looks like it might be pronounced Potjie, Potjie, but and actually they pronounce it more like Poiki, Poiki, Poiki. And so that's why I make sure to pronounce it that way. Also, they got some very interesting sizes there. In that this big 8-liter Poiki here is only a size 3 as far as they're concerned. They've got sizes of about one half going up to like maybe a size 14 or so. And what they consider to be a size 14 is the stuff of legend. We're talking like this mammoth cauldron of the kind that where you could make anybody in the Midwest knows what booyah is? Well, that's what you could make in a size 14 or 15 Poiki. So, um, and the last thing, I guess, is that, as I mentioned, this was actually made in China and then imported into South Africa before it was then imported here into the US. That's because, unfortunately, in South Africa, all of the cast iron manufacturers or cast iron cookware manufacturers have all gone out of business, unfortunately. Probably the most famous one in South Africa was Falkirk, and they finally folded in maybe about 10 to 12 years ago, around 2010 or so. So yeah, it's a situation we could very well have faced if Lodge had gone out of business. Um, Hello, Matt Stone, and funny, my name is Pokey. Says Johnny Warren. Yeah, and let's not. Oh well, thank you. And my dad made booyah for the neighborhood every summer. And what else? That would be a good raccoon pot. Yes, indeed. I'd have that full of stew in my stove right now. The biggest restoration job, says Honey Badger, was I got from a friend with pans decorating outside his barn. 30 pans that had been outside for decades. All but 2 were saved. Well, that was a good job then, I'd say. But yeah, I have made several stews in this pot as well. In fact, I like making a South African dish in this pot, which they call, well, not just South African, but African, which they call ground nut stew. Basically, it's peanut butter chicken, and that's probably my favorite thing for making in this. But I've made Boston baked beans in this pot, and a number of other stews as well. I've also made my Dutch oven chicken in that pot. So what can you say? It's a big cast iron pot, and pretty much like a Dutch oven, you can cook just about anything in it. So, do you have an unmarked Griswold? How can you tell it's a Griswold? As a matter of fact, I do have one, and it's right over here. Clang, clang, clang. Um, I know it's here because, oh, there it is. I should be able to recognize it easily enough. And how to tell it's an unmarked Griswold? Yeah, clang, clang. Actually, this particular one is it's pretty easy to tell it's an unmarked Griswold, and it's pretty famous, even though it doesn't have the Griswold logo on it. And that would be the Iron Mountain series they produced. And according to historians who know their Griswold a lot more than I do, these were produced around the 1940s or so. This is actually a very easy pan to spot if you recognize the telltale signs. The most obvious one is this very unique handle design. You see, it goes narrow and then it widens out in just this manner. No other cast iron series ever had a handle just like this. Not even Asian, as far as I know. So that in itself makes it very easy to recognize. And likewise, they also use italics in their size number and the model number. So the Iron Mountain Unmarked Griswold series is pretty easy to recognize. Um, I have seen in some instances a few actual Griswold pans that did not have the Griswold logo on them for one reason or another. I would think that they were probably made during the Wagner period, when after the Erie foundry was shut down, and both Griswold and Wagner were made at the Sydney, Ohio foundry, where Wagner remained in business. Some of those do have the Griswold, some of the other markings of a Griswold. Let me see. Probably the best way to do that, I think, would be to bring out a Griswold, and which I've got here somewhere. Okay. Oh yeah. Oh, let me move this to one side. Ugh, and bring out. I've played with this a few times. Ah, the Griswold Dutch oven, that is. Let me take the lid off for the moment and mention the markings underneath a Griswold on the bottom side of a Griswold are pretty obvious, besides the logo here, including the part describing it as a Dutch oven, as well as yeah, as well as the cast iron, the words cast iron on the top. I've seen a few pans that actually had most of these markings, but did not have the Griswold logo on them. So, in general, they're pretty easy to spot. Um, Wagner, as we know, made those unmarked Wagner pans, and they made quite a few of them because they're very common. The ones that only have the description that might say 10-inch skillet, for instance. Uh, Griswold never did do that, at least not until they were again being manufactured by at the same place as Wagner. So yeah, unmarked Griswolds are not quite as common. Actually, there's one thing I'll disagree with what I just said, and that would be lids. There are a number of Griswold lids out there that have the circular pan, and they do not have the Griswold circular, the circular rings on the inside. I mean, and yet do not have the Griswold logo on the inside. This one actually does, but it's covered with seasoning, unfortunately, to the point where the Griswold logo is kind of hard to see. However, there were a number of pans out there that did have this and no Griswold logo at all. But the circular rings again make them pretty easy to recognize. So, um, even so, because Griswold is so popular among antique vendors and collectors and everything like that, pretty much anything that even hints of being a Griswold will probably be labeled as a Griswold, especially when you go on the hunt and go to antique malls and the like. And there are a lot of things they call possibly a Griswold, possible Griswold. Yeah, right. Hello. How much difference is there between a deep skillet and a chicken fryer? None. They're essentially the same thing, and they just call it a chicken fryer. Well, I think with Lodge, they actually officially call it a chicken fryer. They even mark it with a CF, the same way they mark their skillets with an SK, and their Dutch ovens with a DO. The chicken fryers are marked with a CF. Others, like say, for instance, the BSR chicken fryer, I'm not sure if they ever officially called it a chicken fryer, but they just called it a deep skillet. But it's essentially the same thing, a nice deep skillet, which again, just like about any piece here, is really great for use in the kitchen. If you've got yourself a chicken fryer with a nice good lid, then you can pretty much do anything in that you can in a Dutch oven. It's only a little bit more shallow than a Dutch oven. So, um, and some stone. I have a hinge 8 of the Griswold with the logo looking faded. Needs a bottom for it. Wow, a hinged lid. Congratulations on that. Yeah. None of my deep skillets have lips. Well, this is true. And a lot of them did not. So let me pull out a couple of things here. As here is a BSR chicken fryer, a deep skillet, which again does not have a lip on it. It is really just that. It's just simply a deep skillet with much higher walls. Also, with BSR in particular, their chicken fryers or their deep skillets, they had a smooth bottom. Every other BSR skillet had had the heat ring on the bottom all the way up to the end of business. On the other hand, as far as lips go, here is, in fact, is this getting a little rusty on the bottom? I'm gonna have to re-season this one. Here is a Wagner lid. In fact, this is an unmarked Wagner lid, and this one most definitely has a lip around the side here. That's how you can tell it's a lid and not just simply a skillet. Although this one I was fortunate enough to score at an antique mall in New Bedford, Massachusetts, and the seller just called it a cast iron skillet, and I got it for $5 because again he didn't know what it was, and really there is absolutely nothing on here that would indicate it's a Wagner. The handle is different. It's got this flat, but flat top rather bottom with a design on it, and of course, there's no reason why you can't use it as a skillet. It essentially is a skillet that also happens to be designed as a lid, although it's got this little hook here for hinging onto the Wagner chicken fryer. Some Wagner chicken fryers, in fact, did not even have this hinged lid. Um, so actually, yeah, I'm wrong. That was not a chicken fryer. That was what do they call it then? The Wagner. I think they call it a double boiler or or I forget the actual name they had for their hinged pans. I don't know if I'm going senile or if it's not just because I don't have all the details memorized about, say, Wagner and Griswold, for instance. um, and Honey Badger, I have two Wapik Indian head number sevens, one noticeably higher sidewalls than the other. Would that be considered a deep skillet as opposed to the other? I suppose it could be. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of WAPIC, unfortunately. You can say that as far as their manufacturing process was concerned, they were not quite as strict on their quality control as, say, Griswold was. Yeah, and that's so it's entirely possible that maybe both of them were made as skillets. But really something like the size of the wall would be something that you would think that should be pretty much set in stone. So if one is deeper than the other, then you may be right that one of them might indeed be a deep skillet or even a chicken fryer. And Beth's wife came home Monday night. Okay, well, that's good there. Hello, Cynthia Wesley. No, nice to see you here as well. Due to the weather, my injection procedure was scheduled to next Tuesday. I'm ready to get it over, and I don't blame you at all for that, Papa Dan. And yeah, Wapik. Yeah, Wapik. And I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right when I call it Wapik because some people say it's actually pronounced Wapak. Although my understanding is the city itself is pronounced Wapakoneta. It's not Wapakoneta in Ohio. So I don't have any answer for that. I mean, if there's somebody who is more experienced with WAPIC or WAPAC, then please let me know. I'm more than happy to learn myself. There have been a very few pans out there, in fact, produced by WAPIC that had the last half of the city. Instead of saying WAPIC, WAPAK on the top, it actually said Oneta on the pan. So I guess you could actually, if you had a WAPIC and an Oneta, you could consider them to be a pair, perhaps. Call them and see how they answer the phone. Assuming they actually have any operators who work in that city anymore. Welcome to the 21st century. And what did I just miss here? Alma Waslewski. My daughter had four number three skillets to choose from Lodge, Iron Mountain, BSR, and Wagner. She chose Wagner. Well, I'm hoping that, no matter which one she chose, I would think that she got herself a nice cast iron pan. There's certainly nothing wrong with that. If she chose it just because of the brand, well, that's her choice, of course. I have in my number threes. I have a marked Wagner and an unmarked Wagner myself. So, and I really need to give them more use because I seem to be giving more preference to my BSRs. Gee, I wonder why. Let me put this down right now. Ugh, and still going on here. Well, Wandering Sand, again, I'm more than open to questions. And likewise, if anybody else here wants to show off their own cast iron here in the chat, please do so. I mean, you can tell us about some of your favorite pans or a score you made. I mean, I could brag yet again about scoring that Red Mountain Dutch oven about a week or so ago. But I think I've already talked enough about that, unless people want me to show it yet again. So, Cynthia, do you have freezing rain, sleet, and a little snow mixed in? Well, here in New York, I understand we're going to get about an inch of snow in the late night hours, and I think it's going to be dry snow, so that's not going to be so bad. The Wagner felt the best. Oh, I get it. Yeah, in other words, it had a nice smooth surface to it. Well, then I'd say she had a good reason to choose it. So, and I would not knock her for that. Bets, chicken and rice finished. Wow. I hope your chicken and rice turned out okay. Any wooden handle cast iron you can show? You know, I do not have any wooden handle cast iron in my collection. I'm actually a little ashamed to say. A few years ago, again, just when I was starting out, my mom gave me a set of two of those Taiwan made wooden handled cast iron saucepans, and I had since gotten rid of those. One of them, I believe, I actually gave to a person to use. The other one, interestingly enough, was a 3-quart wooden handled saucepan, pretty big. And regrettably, the wooden handle was worn out in that the screw handle on the inside had worn out the wood on the inside because it would not hold steady. Anytime I tried to tip that pot over, it would just it would just settle back into a flat position no matter how much I turned the pot. So it was worn out, and because of that, I ended up getting rid of that. Um, I did inherit a number of cast iron pans from my parents, and not all of them I consider to be heirlooms. There are some that I will indeed treasure forever. That one, that's okay. I've no complaints about those wooden handled Taiwan saucepans, except that that one was indeed worn out. So, can you show your number three unmarked Wagner? Okay, if you like, I can dig that out. Here comes more noise again. Um, and we can go from there. Let me see if I can get this as quickly as possible. That's a BSR Lodge. I know the dang thing is here somewhere. Well, I just found the marked Wagner. Ugh. So here's a start. Here is the actual Wagner number three with the logo on it. But let's keep going. Somewhere in here. Yeah, this is organized. It's only a little hard to dig them all out on a moment's notice. Here it is. Found it. Clang, clang, clang. Anyway, it's nice and simple. Here is a Wagner number three, which has the marking there that says 6.5-inch skillet. The fact that it has the typewriter style font, I believe, identifies it as being made in the 1950s. They seem to use that one in the 1950s, and then in the 1960s, they switched to a more standard style font without looking like a typewriter. That plus the lack of a made in USA mark. So that's why I would date this to the 1950s. This one here actually has definitely a nice milled surface to it. In fact, if I can get the angle right, you can even see the circular pattern here where they ground down this pan. So yeah, so this definitely has a nice smooth surface on it too. So, and again, as I said, this is a number three size. Even the only place where you see a number three, though, is on the top of the handle. And Handsome Stone made Peruvian fried rice for daughter's school project, so naturally started looking at cast iron woks other than flat bottom. What is your preference with the handles? With the wok, you mean? I have been using my Lodge wok, which is meant to sit flat on a stove here. And this one, of course, simply has these dual handles here, as opposed to the long handle you see on most woks. And in fact, I have barely ever used a standard wok with a handle, so I can't even say that I know how to toss food in a wok. That's one thing, yet one of many cooking skills I have yet to learn. So I should really get myself a wok just so that I can practice, in fact. Um, I found a wooden handled pan once, says Val's Black Cats. The handle broke off while I was picking it up. Well, at least you found out before you bought it. Here's some inside info. Piqua Favorite is called Favorite because the city slogan is the favorite city. Everything there is called Favorite, including milk jugs, cardboard boxes, anything. Well, that's actually pretty amusing. The earliest, no, yeah, that's right. There are early cast iron pans from either the beginning of the 20th century or maybe even the late 19th century that are actually labeled as the favorite, the favorite. And my understanding is that's actually not from Favorite Stove and Range. I thought they were, but apparently another company made the favorite pans. Um, and yeah, okay, handsome looking to light cast iron wok at Walmart or Amazon. Well, yeah, I could actually break character and go with a carbon steel wok. But anyway, if I was going to buy myself one of those woks, I would go to an or a Chinese market and get a real one, not one that's coated from Amazon or Walmart. Just because I'm kind of a I'm spoiled like that. Let's put it that way. And yeah, these are not coated, you say. Well, if they're not coated, then that means they would rust, wouldn't they? Carbon steel, I mean, unless it's a stainless steel wok, perhaps. That would be my best guess. But even carbon steel will rust if it's not coated or seasoned or otherwise protected. So they are cast iron. Well, I might want to take a look at that. Did Columbus Iron Works make the favorite? I still don't have an answer for that, unfortunately, and I would really need to ask if you want to research it yourself. Um, Columbus Iron Works, they're most famous for making grills. I don't recall them making any actual pans and pots and pans. But if I'd like to be proven wrong, actually, and I wouldn't mind seeing a pan from Columbus Iron Works. Funny thing is, one of the more common grills made by Columbus Iron Works is often seen and sold as a cast iron pan. Usually they call it an oval roaster because it's in that shape. It's oval, it has two thick handles on it, and you can easily recognize it because it's got these bars going across the bottom of that particular design. That was meant as as the base of a grill, like the Sportsman grill, but of course, you can indeed use it as just a cast iron pan, and there's really nothing wrong with that either. So, Janet Batista, I once bought a wok from Chinatown in New York City. Ex-husband, it was a nice wok. Oh, sounds interesting. Um, I've been to Chinatown in New York City, and man, I probably should have bought a wok then, but I was only using an electric stove back then. I have a couple of carbon steel woks, both handle styles, good cookers. Mr. 90-mile pipe. I have a bad flu right now. Well, my condolences. Watching you talk about woks. Well, thank you very much. I'm glad to be able to help at least in some small way. And going on here, yes, definitely use handle pads. Okay, not even delirious. Do you own any enamel coated pieces? Oh, I have several enameled cast iron pans. Yes. Which ones do you especially like? Well, again, it really that question I can only answer is depending on the situation because well, that's one reason why my collection is so varied because I seem to want to have a pan to do everything. Not any one pan can do everything, and so we vary with that. I've got my I've got a large 7 quart enamel Dutch oven, which I really like. I've got a bigger 13 quart stove enamel Dutch oven, which I really like. I also have an enameled cast iron casserole pan or lasagna pan, which I have indeed used for making lasagna and other pasta dishes. Of course, now that I have the large bare iron casserole pan, I'm still going to have to use that as well to make a lasagna with it. In addition, I also have a what else? Oh yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, here we are getting into Valentine's, and this year it seemed like, especially the stores like say TJ Maxx and Home Goods, they're really pushing those heart-shaped enameled Dutch ovens, more so than previous years. I think I have one of those, the heart-shaped Dutch oven, and I got it about 3 years ago, I think. So and yeah, I definitely pull it out for use around this time of year, but it's a good Dutch oven and you can certainly use it at any time of the year either. So yeah, for a while, I had a Le Creuset skillet. I think it was about 8 inches or so, enameled. And I ended up giving it away, and I actually regret that. But of course, I had found that one at a flea market, so I got a good price for it. And that's about the only way I would buy another Le Creuset enameled skillet if I got it at a bargain rate price. I can say that about almost all my pieces, with one or two exceptions. That yeah, I'm a cheapskate, and I'm really trying not to go overboard spending tons and tons of money for cast iron, with one or two exceptions. I use my 10-inch way more than any other size, and I don't blame you there. I have probably more 10-inch skillets in my collection than I know what to do with. Besides my BSR and my large redneck pan, my stack of 10-inch skillets from Cracker Barrel's Americana series, as well as the Stargazer 10-inch skillet. Yeah, it's hard for me to keep track of all of these things, and that's why as well I need to try keep on rotating through them as well. Richard Lusk, I have a couple square cast iron pans divided like lunch trays. I think they're Griswold. Are you familiar with these? Several brands actually made those divided pans. Uh, Griswold did make one, and I believe they called it a breakfast skillet, and theirs was more square shaped. Wagner made one as well. I believe it was a Wagner one that I actually found and got as a Christmas present for my brother several years ago. I have no idea if he ever used it. Lodge has one, and they re-released one their breakfast skillet as part of their legacy series about 2 or 3 years ago, and theirs is more oval shaped. I'm told even BSR had a breakfast skillet, but I've never seen it. I must be. I have to think it's very rare. So I have a square breakfast skillet, New Lodge. Oh, they must have redesigned it then. And I can't say I blame them, that's for sure. Val's Black Cat rules. I love my number 8 and number 9 the best. Yes, they are. They are great all purpose pans. And Honey Badger, I have a number 9 Arend and Arnold. They were a foundry from Wappick. Used Griswold and Wappick molds. Their mold is an arrow through two A's. Yes, I did see in some of your comments you mentioned one a cast iron pan with an arrow on it, and so I guess that was the result of the research. I hadn't even heard of this one before. Arend and Arnold. Bevel Burn, a new 7 quart Le Creuset would cost a lot. Great dumpster find. Yes, exactly. If you got that in a dumpster, I'm not disagreeing with you at all. That is a great find. I would guess you probably found it in a pretty cruddy condition, unless some miracle it might have even look brand new. That's happened. Because a lot of those enameled cast iron pans can be cleaned up. Some of them, the enamel is chipped, and that you have to consider that a loss. But if it's only stained, it can indeed be cleaned up and brought back to life. I'm always telling the kids, don't bump into the cast iron. Oh, I know that feeling all too well. Of course, I've got two kids. I've got to keep away from the cast iron myself. Two furry kids with 4 feet and tails. So, yes, I'm quite familiar with that. Previous owner must have thrown it away because they burned food on the bottom. Yes, exactly. That's what we mentioned. Papa Dan, have a Wagner Oval Roaster number 5 bottom. No luck finding the lid for years. Last week found the Wagner Oval Roaster number 7 lid. Same period as number 5. Now looking for number 5 lid and number 7 bottom. Yes, I know that feeling. However, it is something of a standing, not rule, but guidelines in the hunt for vintage cast iron, in that you should snatch up stray lids, because you never want, number one, you never know when you're going to find something that fits. And number two, of course, there's always the possibility you could get the other part for it, hopefully less expensive than buying the set. That's kind of how I came across. I think I just showed this one in a video I posted recently. That would be this new idea spiderweb shaped lid here, which I still have not found the bottom to. I may never find the bottom to it, but of course, you never know, and that's why they call it the treasure hunt. So. Snatching up strays. Yes. Yeah, Pyrex lids are where it at. Yes, that's true too. You can always get yourself a glass lid at a thrift store. I found a large enameled casserole pan at the scrapyard, a couple chips on the outside. That doesn't sound so bad. If the chips are on the outside, go ahead and use it, because, in fact, my heart-shaped Dutch oven, I'm sorry to say, the one of the handles is chipped now. So, but of course, I could still use it. Bryant Woods. I have two 10-inch skillets made by Lodge with the King Cotton logo on it. King Cotton Meat Company that made hot dogs and bacon for the southern states. Trying to find out how much it's worth. Wow, that's something. Collectors pans. It's hard to say. I mean, number one, I'm not a seller. I can't really give any kind of a price for any cast iron pan. Really would not be able to judge it. Um, yeah, my best guess would be to go onto eBay and see what that kind of a pan sells for on eBay. Personally, I would not want to pay more than 1/3 to 1/4 of the price of any cast iron pan being sold on eBay, but that's again because I'm a cheapskate. However, that at least may give you a benchmark or a ballpark estimate of what you feel that your pan might be worth. I have a family heirloom new idea chicken fryer and lid. Oh, well, congratulations with that. Yeah, the new idea. Here's the thing. Right up until only a few days ago, I thought that new idea was in fact made in UK, made in Great Britain. And that's what a lot of cast iron vendors and collectors say, that it was actually made in Great Britain. But number one, I found out doing some research that apparently it may have been affiliated with the Chicago Hardware Foundry. There was this posting made to Reddit last August that includes some original ads printed by, apparently by Chicago Hardware Foundry, put into newspapers, where they were selling those uh, cast iron pans with the lids for $1 each back in those days. Boy, those prices were incredible. But the point being is that, first of all, if Chicago Hardware Foundry was actually advertising those, plus, you know, for a rare pan like the new idea, there actually are quite a few of them out here in the US. Almost, yeah. I mean, you'd think that if they were actually imported from Great Britain, where cast iron is pretty rare anyway, how come so many of these have ended up here in the US? And just as important, what I noticed, I mean, when I first came across this pan, a photo of this pan on the internet, God, I don't know, going on maybe 10 years or so ago, my first thought was that it was dated to the Art Deco period of the 20th century because the design of this certainly looks like it would have come from that, all of the angles and everything. Anybody who's familiar with Art Deco, I'm hoping you might agree with me that it actually looks like that kind of a design. Plus the fact that that these things here were polished so well underneath, and there isn't even any sign of a gate mark, like the vast majority of pans made in the 19th century. So this thing, if this was in fact produced in England in the 19th century, they were decades ahead of their time because it does not look like a 19th century piece. So I'm kind of skeptical now of the idea that this new idea came from Great Britain in the 1800s. And I'm kind of leaning towards the opinion that these were, in fact, made in the USA, maybe by Chicago Hardware Foundry, in fact. But obviously, I don't have any solid evidence yet. I'm just making a guess and coming and forming an opinion about that. So that's my opinion, I guess. Now, gee, pal, I find glass every bit as hefty and functional as cast iron, and you can look in your cooking as well. Well, there is that. I mean, granted, you can't heat glass up too hot in the oven, unfortunately. It might shatter. But if you're just doing some casual baking, or even if you're doing some casual stovetop cooking too, glass lid works just fine, as good, if not better, than cast iron, in fact. So, Giuseppe Cazzetta, good night. Good night, Giuseppe. Wish I had a nickel for every glass lid I have chipped. Millionaire, yes, indeed. That is, of course, the other problem with glass lids. Unfortunately, is that they break. I did, in fact, dig up a Wagner 12-inch glass lid and sent it to my friends as a Christmas present to fit on top of their unmarked Wagner number 10, and it only lasted for a couple of months before it was broken, unfortunately. Well, that's how it goes. I mean, yeah, obviously everybody was upset, but it was an accident. It's not like I'm mad. So that's just how it goes. In fact, now I remember it. In fact, my grandmother, my Italian grandmother, she actually had several Wagner cast iron pans in her kitchen that she used regularly, and they had glass lids. And I distinctly remember one time coming home from being out with her, and she had a new puppy, only a few months old, that was causing all kinds of trouble. And what she found out when she walked in the door and saw that, in fact, that puppy had knocked over and smashed her Wagner glass lid. So, yeah, it happens, unfortunately. I mean, she didn't know it was a Wagner. All she knew it was just that it was a glass lid. So, but again, it happens. You should always look at the glass lids at the thrift store for that possible Griswold score. And it happened to me. Oh God, I'm already going off back about 10 years ago, but I can distinctly remember it was 2013. And I will not forget that because I was at Savers, Savers, that chain of thrift stores. And yes, in fact, at Savers, I found a Griswold glass lid. It had the Griswold logo on the knob handle and everything. And it was $3. And I decided to take the that Griswold lid to the National Dutch Oven Gathering of 2013 because for a couple of reasons. Number one, I was too afraid to use that lid because it was glass. It was too valuable. A Griswold glass lid. I didn't want to take the chance of it breaking. And plus, I'd only paid $3 for it. So I took it to the National Dutch Oven Gathering and gave it to them because they had a cast iron auction. And they auctioned it off, and I think somebody ended up paying $45 for it. So congratulations to them. So yes, it can happen. And there are unmarked Wagner glass lids out there too, which I believe it has to do with the actual design of the glass that you would be able to recognize it. But you'd need to look up photos because I can't even describe it. And yeah, one last thing about glass lids. That was one of the reasons why BSR resized, changed the sizes of a number of their cast iron pans in the middle 1970s. They wanted them especially to be more compatible with glass lids because their customers wanted them to be more compatible with glass lids. Now, I mean, they never produced glass lids at BSR. After all, that would have required constructing an entire new um, foundry or whatever you call a glass for blowing or glass molding. Um, Basically, just that. It was a lot of expensive equipment would have had to have been constructed just for manufacturing glass lids. So they made the business decision of resizing a number of their cast iron pans. And one reason, not the only reason, was to be more compatible with glass lids. Going in the 20s tomorrow. Well, that's good. That means the temperature is going up. Honey Badger, I have a 1970s unmarked Wagner Dutch oven that was my mom's with a glass lid. But now that I think of it, I don't think I've seen Wagner cast iron lids after the 70s. Am I wrong? I don't think you're wrong. I do believe you're correct, and Wagner just simply stopped making cast iron lids. I guess glass lids just became so popular that it simply wasn't worth it. They'd lose money on iron lids, and so they did indeed stop making them. I believe you're right in that they stopped making them, and I'm hard pressed really to think of Wagner iron lids any more recent than maybe the 1950s, I guess. Um, Using oh well, let me bring one out. Here it is from my Wagner chicken fryer. In fact, it is not hinged, but this is a Wagner unmarked lid, and it's very easy to spot if you know what you're looking for because it has this sawtooth rim circle design here under the lid, so it's unmistakable. But I cannot recall seeing any of these that would probably date any later or than the 1940s to 1950s. I would think that for a while after Griswold and Wagner were owned by the same company, they probably continued producing Griswold unmarked lids for a while, the ones with the circular pattern, as I mentioned. Those are unmarked Griswold lids. Maybe they continued producing unmarked Wagner lids as well, but I think you're right in that they must have simply stopped making iron lids fairly early on and only made glass lids. That's why I mentioned a while back when I did a little video describing the unmarked Wagner Dutch oven, the 5-quart Dutch oven. My comment was that they never made lids for those, and I'm not sure if I'm entirely right. Um, I mean, obviously, an unmarked Wagner or unmarked Griswold lid would fit on those Dutch ovens, but I will definitely say that they almost certainly sold them with glass lids. But it's hard to say because, of course, we have very little evidence for it. All we can do is make conclusions based on the clues that we know from, well, researching history. That's all we can do. I mean, this was decades ago from a company that is long since out of business. So all we can do is speculate. Terry Sinchev, I found a glass lid at a thrift store that fits my Wagner Dutch oven. I like it because it doesn't have to be seasoned every time I use it. And yes, that is a great reason to use it. And I don't disagree with you one bit about that. In fact, that's one reason why somewhere down here I have I got a 15-inch aluminum, no, that's a stainless steel lid, especially to fit on top of my 15-inch cast iron pans. Let me bring that one out. Oh, yeah, two things. Oh, yeah, and here, in fact, is a 14-inch glass lid. I got this initially for my Le Creuset big Dutch oven, which I told you that story very briefly. Huge Le Creuset enamel Dutch oven. I got it at a flea market for $6 because it was in beat up condition and it never had a lid. And so I went and got a glass lid for it, and it worked just fine. But also, I just mentioned this. Let me dig this one out. Here it is, a 15-inch stainless steel lid. And in fact, this lid is Volrath. Yeah, as I mentioned, it actually comes from Volrath. However, it actually says made in USA too. Yeah, I'm wondering if I can get a shot of that. This is not a vintage lid though. I bought this at a restaurant store. I think only within the past year or less. So, well, maybe 2 years. But anyway, this is brand new. So, but yeah, as I mentioned, it's from the Volrath company. Volrath, and I know I've said this enough times before, they're still in business and they're actually doing great business. It's that they stopped making cast iron cookware somewhere around World War II or so. And they really are out of the market for domestic uh, kitchenware, meaning that they don't make pieces for sale at places like Walmart, for instance, or Target or anything like that. You're not going to find a Volrath at Walmart. On the other hand, you will find Volrath at just about any restaurant supply store. They are heavy into restaurant supplies and business stuff. You can also buy it on Amazon too. So yeah, if you walk into any restaurant supply store, you're guaranteed to see a number of items by Volrath, including aluminums and stainless steel skillets. In fact, not to mention this lid that I bought at that restaurant store. Check out the antique stores for the safety ring pot cover made by Echo. Very cool. Gets the job done. They were dipped in wax and paraffin for shipping. I find that many lids and pots seem interchangeable across brands like Griswold, Renfro, Detroit, etc. That's absolutely true because not all, but most of these cast iron makers, they their pots and pans were just about the same size. Wagner and Griswold, partly because they were so popular, they were something of a generic size, and many other companies, their pans and their lids and their pans were made in the same size. Lodge, for instance. That's why a Lodge lid will definitely fit on a Griswold skillet or Dutch oven, and likewise a Wagner will also, likewise, a Lodge lid will fit on a Wagner skillet or a Dutch oven, and the other way around as well. BSR was an exception. They intentionally made all of their cookware slightly bigger than the competition. And they did that on purpose as a business move because it's bigger. You get more for it. The disadvantage of that, of course, was that they weren't compatible with anything else. Only BSR lids will fit on BSR pans and pots, and the other way around, too. A Lodge lid will not fit on a BSR skillet. Not until they changed their sizes in the 1970s to make them more compatible with the competition. Let me put that there. Okay, and that's why I have a Ronin BSR lid. What's a Ronin? I'm missing something. Maybe I don't recognize that. Hog Wild work has been closed till late tonight. Shipping wax and paraffin. Are you talking about how they ship commercial cast iron in order to keep it from rusting, perhaps. Because yes, they did use wax coatings for a long time, um, especially to keep them from especially to keep them from rusting. And that's why for a long time, until a lot of these companies, the instructions on their cast iron were that first you had to season it at least once before you used it. And in fact, if I remember right, even when I got my a piece from Bayou Classic, I believe that was the instruction, in fact, that you had to season it in the oven first to burn off the wax coating. Kind of like the grill temperature. Okay. Hold on. Never too late to learn a little bit about cast iron. Hello. Oh, hello. Hello, Brian Anderson. And yes, welcome to this chat. And please feel free. As I said, the point of this is really kind of like a free for all discussion here. And I encourage everybody to ask questions and answer questions. I've got most of my collection out here, and you're free to ask questions about anything at all here, or even anything that's not here. You're also free to talk about your own cast iron here. I mean, you can boast about some of your favorite pans or scores that you've made, all of which is interesting, and I encourage everybody to do that because again, that's what makes this fun. So please, again, feel free to ask questions and answer questions. And anything at all. I mean, whether about modern day cast iron, of which I have a number of pieces, vintage cast iron, of which I have a number of pieces, Asian cast iron, I have a few of those, and as well as good old made in USA cast iron, and I have quite a few of those, and I'm glad to say that. So, um, yeah, and thank you. Well, okay, but well, what can I say? Captain Kirk, what did Griswold coat the Dutch oven lids with? It's not wax. Is that what you're referring to right now? Um, I do not. Oh, wait a second. Griswold lids were enameled on the inside, and I believe Griswold was the only company to do that. Yes, that's right. The outside was bare iron, but the inside was enameled. And the most obvious reason for that would be, of course, again, to prevent them from rusting. Because as we all know all too well, it's pretty easy for a cast iron lid to rust on the inside from condensation. It happens quite often. And yeah, I have that problem too. But yes, it's true. Griswold lids were enameled on the inside. I don't know if they kept doing that all the way to the point where after they were bought out by Wagner or not. You would need a better Griswold expert, and I'm not a Griswold expert. I know some stuff about Griswold, but I cannot quote. I don't have the book of Wagner and Griswold memorized. Let's put it that way. um, so, but that might help. I know I have an incurable iron deficiency. Yes, I know that feeling all too well. That's why we call it cast ironitis. Bob S. I'm gonna try out roasting the chicken over a bed of rice Saturday. Well, the best I could say is I hope you like it with a Wagner chicken fryer as a lid. Yeah, there you go. Nice idea too. And yeah, I hope you like it. As I mentioned, my Dutch oven chicken and rice, my very basic recipe, and this is one of the first recipes I guess I actually came up with myself, was just very simple. You simply put in the rice, plop the chicken on top, cover it, and simply cook it that way for 90 minutes. You do not get a crispy skin that way, of course. Everything is soft, but it's definitely a well cooked chicken. And I really have not had any complaints about that. I love crispy skin on chicken. I love chicken, period, even when it doesn't have crispy skin. On the other hand, that method that I kind of stumbled across went last week with the BSR Dutch oven. I liked it because in the end, I posted a picture of that, by the way, I believe you know. That was when I took that big 7 pound chicken and put it in the Dutch oven with rice for about an hour or so, and I did it breast down. So when it came out of the oven after an hour, the underside was definitely done, but the breast was not. The breast was only like about 130 degrees or so. So that was when I turned the chicken over and just put it back in the oven at 400 degrees, left the oven off, and let it roast that way until the breast temperature hit 165. And it worked great because, I mean, again, it gave it a nice crisp skin that way. And we knew the underside was cooked because it was cooked. So we had a thoroughly roasted chicken. I like that. And I should really actually, yet another thing I'm going to have to make a real video out of because, as I said, it turned out pretty well. Rice-A-Roni hack works too if you want to save time. um, I don't know if it's brilliant, R. Hughes, but as I said, I like it. Still hunting for a Wagner 1403 bottom to match my bullseye lid. Oh, yeah, that's a bullseye lid that I just showed you guys, wasn't it? Let me show it to you again. Yeah, this was the one that I managed to come across. As you call it, a bullseye lid, and I can certainly see why you call it that. And yeah, so apparently the bottom is a 1403. Rice-A-Roni, make it with some sour cream. Yeah, there you go. But yeah, usually in these instances, usually it's you find the pot first, and it's impossible to find the lid. In my case, and I guess in your case as well, it turned out we found the lid, and we're trying to find the pot to match it. But then again, I have several lids where I'm in that situation. I already showed you my new idea lid, for instance. And then, of course, there's this lid. A BSR 13-inch camp oven or spider lid. This was an interesting one anyway, because when I first got this, I did not know it was BSR. This was when I had acquired a big vintage cast iron pot. It might have been an Erie, or maybe it was a cauldron that I no longer have. But either way, I had acquired myself a nice big an inch and old cast iron pot, and of course, I wanted a lid for it. And I managed to find this thing here on eBay. It was rusty, and of course, it was considered an unknown lid. So I didn't pay too much for it, and that's why, of course, I was more than happy to get it. And if I remember right, it did not fit. However, not too long after that, hi, Trouble, what are you doing now? Anyway, not too long after that, researching BSR camp ovens, I discovered I actually had this lid in my possession. And furthermore, the size of 13 inches means it's definitely from the older Red Mountain days. Since that time, I've been wishing to find a bottom for this lid for the actual either a camp oven or a spider that fits this. And I don't know if I will ever find one because turns out those are extremely rare, and I mean extremely rare. Along the order of maybe not the Erie spider skillets, but probably close to that. So, but you never know. And that's one reason why I have this. Another reason why I have this is because I actually have a cast iron pan that this thing fits, but it happens to be not by BSR. So even though I don't know when, if ever, I'll find the lid for that, I'm sorry, the bottom for that lid, I am not going to be getting rid of that lid. I'm going to be keeping that lid. San Francisco treat, great. Now you're giving me an urge to have rice-a-roni. Hello, Jose Latias. What have you missed? Well, I've been rambling about cast iron. That's the best I could say. We've kind of gotten into a discussion of cast iron lids, and that's not a bad thing. And we talked some about unmarked Wagner and unmarked Griswold. But again, I mean, this is an open discussion here, and everybody, again, is free to keep tossing out your question, folks, and don't hesitate to answer them either. Captain Kirk, your lodge video has a number 14 with a US on it. Any info on it? I happen to have one. Congratulations. And you have a 12 like that as well. Okay. That particular one, the lodge US, I guess I can go in 3 stages. Stage number 1, people, a lot of people for a while were saying that Lodge produced those U.S. pans for the military. or for some reason, the US Forestry Service. I don't know why they said Forestry Service, but that's how the rumors went. Lodge themselves have since debunked that, and they said no, they did not produce any special pans for the U.S. military. So no, those. I mean, despite sellers still saying that those were made for the military, that's not true. But hey, they're still Lodge pans, so that's fine. Number two, I was of the opinion that those were actually three-notch Lodge pans, maybe from the 1950s or so, because they did not have the standard Lodge markings, like an SK for skillet, for instance. That was my opinion. Lodge collectors, on the other hand, I think I've mentioned a couple of times that I've been burned by Lodge collectors. Some of them have corrected my statements rather harshly. And I'm not going to say any more about that because I am not fond of drama. However, in regards to Lodge, I have since been corrected, and it seems as though that those Lodge pans with the U.S. mark are apparently from the 1960s, and it's some believe now that those may have been Lodge's first attempts to put a Made in USA mark on their pans before they officially put that big, very obvious Made in USA mark on their pans. Based on that, it would suggest that those large US skillets are actually from about the 1960s, which is a nice year. Any large pan is good, whether it's a brand new one from today or from the 1960s, or even going back to the early days of single notch Lodge or the Arc logo Lodge. I would not pass up a Lodge pan. uh, then again, I have so many Lodge pans that I'm not sure I have a need for more Lodge pans. So, but they're still great cast iron pans. Lodge collectors can be quite, yeah, okay, yeah, exactly. Shh. I'm not going to say any more either. Is it true Griswold made a lightweight, thin line of pots so women could handle them easier? Um, I can't answer that. There was, of course, this, well, it's well known, regrettably, that women were, a women's place was supposed to be in the kitchen for far too many years. And there's no need to even get into that. We all know about that thing about history and how, no, it wasn't right. And yet that's how it was for the longest time. And yes, indeed, cookware was indeed marketed especially for, well, women's use. A woman was expected to work in the kitchen, kind of like the same way that they made toy kitchen sets and toy washing machines for little girls, those kind of things. Um, I'm not so sure though that Griswold made their pans so light and thin, especially for women's use. I think they made them so light and thin just because they could, and that way they would show them as a luxury item. Because you figure during the manufacturing process, it's easier to polish a thin cast iron pan than it would be to polish a big, heavy cast iron pan. How about that as a possible theory? Because we know, that Griswold pans, especially earlier Griswold pans, are among the greatest quality cast iron pans ever made. That's simply true. With their glass smooth surfaces. I once found a Griswold's Erie skillet from like the late 1800s, had probably the smoothest surface I think I'd ever felt on a cast iron pan. And I would say again, it's easy. I mean, a thick and heavy pan would have been much harder to polish to that kind of a sheen. At least that's my thought. And if you can make it light, then you can make it cheap. Well, no. Well, Griswold was always considered a luxury item. On the other hand, of course, cookware was for the longest time, they were considered to be pretty much cheap disposable items. even like brand names like Griswold and Wagner. They were frying pans. They were meant for the kitchen. They were meant for women's work. Yeah. So it goes. Um, so you're so yeah, it's true that they didn't sell them that expensive too. So Captain Kirk, I meant when I have a 12 like that, you have I was referring to the 13-inch lid. Oh, that you mean the 12, the 13-inch, yes. BSR, well, they did make quite a few 12 inches as well. And in fact, up over here, here is a BSR 12-inch, in fact. This one comes on a BSR Spider, a Camp Spider that I have. The interesting thing about this one is you notice this tab lid. This indicates that this is a later BSR from their Century Cookware series, because sometime during the late 60s to 70s, they made the decision of making all of their camp lids with this tab rather than an actual handle because it was cheaper to make. It was easier and less costly, less expensive for them to make it like that. Now, these tab handles, they suck. They're I mean, nobody can lift these stupid things. Yes, it's got this little hole in the center, and yes, you can fit a Dutch oven lifter through it, but nobody liked these things. They did it because it was a business decision. So, I mean, there's nothing we can do about it now. But nonetheless, okay. Now let me bring this on. There we go. The reason why they never did that with their skillet lids was because their skillet lids were more popular. They sold more of them. They sold a lot less of their camp cookware, so that's why they cut corners in those instances. Mine has the handle cover. Well, if yours has the handle cover, then you're lucky. You've got an older Red Mountain series lid then. So congratulations on having that. Here's the other thing though. Um, um, One thing, and I found this out through researching BSR as well. They're the earliest models of the Red Mountain series camp ovens, with the legs and those 12-inch lids and all that. They were shaped completely different from modern day legged camp ovens like we see from Lodge, for instance. They were completely different. They looked more like cauldrons. They had their ears, and you know how modern day camp ovens, they have the flat ears and the handles, just like any other piece. In the olden days, they didn't have that. They were shaped more like cauldrons. They had ears, you know, more like this. Ears horizontal, I'm sorry, vertical rather than horizontal. And those are as rare as hen's teeth. I think only once have I even seen a picture of the original BSR Red Mountain camp oven on the internet. I don't think I know. I've never seen an actual one other than those photos. I've seen a number of their spiders. Their spiders seem to have been more popular than those camp ovens, but those camp ovens are like hen's teeth. Really, that's how rare they are. And so I would suspect that even though you've got a handle on your 12-inch lid, if you've actually got a Dutch up, no, if you've actually got a camp oven with that, more likely you probably have the newer Century Cookware camp oven, or you have a spider because, like I said, those spiders were a little bit more popular. Strong, we come pretty close to floating away. Wow, I've had my boat tied up to the kitchen door. And still going on. Those lids with a small eye is because it's because there is a tool you can't find anymore to lift those lids. Yes, exactly. Same as aluminum and stainless steel. That's certainly true. Although there is an idea I saw from that a lot of people actually they got around that just by twisting a piece of wire through that hole so that you could simply lift it by the looped wire. So that's one way to do it. Yeah, there was a tool. However, I've also found out that you have those, if you have those lid lifters, that they sell, like say from Lodge or Camp Chef, for instance, the hook on that lid lifter will fit through those eyes. So it can be used that way as well. Hmm. And going on here, I'm just making sure I haven't missed anything as well. Still going on. Lord, will I have to pick? Oh, yeah, that's right. Mine has the handle cover. Okay. And like the eyes on the old waffle irons. Yes. Okay. I'm a bad boy. I'm starting to get the urge, unfortunately, to look for a waffle iron. Now that I've got myself a gas stove, I'm thinking, gee, it would be nice to actually have a cast iron waffle iron. So now, who knows? But I'm still cheap, and I'm not going to spend like $150 on a waffle iron. I'm sorry. I'm going to see if maybe someday I might actually be able to get myself a bargain and score a waffle iron at a more reasonable price and see if it goes from there. Yeah, rabbit hole alert. Yes, exactly. That's how it goes. That's why they call it cast ironitis here. So, did you ever find a lid for your BSR fish fryer? Not yet. I am still looking. I mean, you saw that video I posted just a few days ago that while I do have the Lodge fish fryer, which was the last generation of the fish fryers that were made after BSR went out of business, the lid for the Lodge fish fryer does not fit on the BSR fish fryer. And I've tried a couple of those sad iron heater gate mark griddles, and so far they have not fit yet. I'm still looking. But hey, but it's not exactly an emergency. I'm gladly patient. Eventually, I'm sure one of these days I will find something that will fit as a lid for that both the deep fish fryer and the shallow fish fryer. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep on using them nonetheless. So, crumb kaki, if I'm pronouncing it right, or crumb cake irons. I don't know how it's pronounced. I guess it might be crumb cake, I suppose. I sure hope Lodge manages to stay in business all throughout my entire life. Well, Lodge right now is still flying high. They have been riding the cast iron renaissance that we've had for the past decade or so, and they have had some of the best business that they've ever had. That's how they could afford to build their new foundry and release new product pretty much several times per year. So that's how Lodge has been able to ship thousands, if not millions, of cast iron pans to big box stores all over the country. And that's why you can see a Lodge display at just about any market that you go to, whether it's Walmart or Kroger or Target or anything like that. You are almost guaranteed to see a Lodge display in any one of those. That actually is really that takes a lot of effort to be able to produce all of those cast iron pans and ship them all over the country to things like that. And that's the reason why, as well, these newer, smaller cast iron companies like Field or Butter Pack or Stargazer, they unfortunately have a long, long way to go before they have a chance. Is this a chip? Something in the seasoning? Anyway, they have a long, long way to go before they have any chance of unseating Lodge's throne. More power to them. I mean, the new elite cast iron pans, as you know, they are really high quality cast iron pans. Again, I'm talking about like Butter Pad or Field or Stargazer or all of them. They're great pans. And if you have one of those, well, go ahead and keep on using it because they're great for using. But none of them are at the point where they can, again, produce thousands and thousands of pans per day or per month and ship them out to, like, say, Walmart, for instance. When they're able to do that, that's when Lodge will have some serious competition here in the USA. And if they can do that, that's going to be a good thing. But right now, as you know, Lodge's most serious competition is still China, thanks to Walmart and the like. Because as you know, Walmart has their own brand, two brands, in fact, the Mainstays brand and the Ozark Trail brand, both of which are still decent cast iron pans, yes. But then we start getting into politics, China versus USA, and the fact that Walmart is, well, you get the idea. Go on and on and on. Anyway, when I went for COVID in September, okay. Hmm. Anyway, do you have all of the BSR S series, the 3, 5, and the 7? I have not yet found the 5S. I was lucky enough to find the 7S on a road trip, and I found the 3S, which is right here, in fact, at Brimfield. In fact, it was from one of the big cast iron vendors, and he didn't know what it was. This was in his throwaway pile, and I got it for $5. The funny thing is, this has a different font than any other of the BSR S series. This has a typewriter type of font, and I've never seen this on a BSR ever, really. Whether it's Red Mountain or the Century series. So it's unusual even for an S series pen. I'm not going to say it makes it more valuable, but it's just unusual. Here's another unusual thing about this. Look how awkward this hole here was. The hanging hole was cast. So yeah, well, I mean, obviously they really did not care too much as long as it fit and they could just toss it on the pile. But, well, that's how it goes. Anyway, so no, I do not have the 5S yet. And yeah, that's one thing I am still looking for and may come across one of these days. Apparently, the 5S is in fact the most rare of the S series in that there are a number of other collectors as well who have the 3S and the 7S, but the 5S again is less common. So I passed the mainstay skillet. It was just too rough and too many deep pits in it. That's the way it was made. Oh, definitely. So, yeah. Reproduction? No, I don't think it was a reproduction because there's no point. I mean, why would anyone want to go through the expense and effort of producing what was essentially an unknown cast iron pan until only a few years ago? And even now, the S series is really not exactly expensive. eBay sells everything at ridiculous prices, yes, but it's not like Griswold, for instance. They make counterfeits of Griswold because it's a well-known brand, and that's but they don't make counterfeits of BSR for that reason. If not for the internet, nobody would have known that the BSR S series even existed. So no, I don't think it's a reproduction. How can you tell if a pan is a reproduction? Two reasons. Number one, they're almost always easy to spot. Counterfeits are usually very, very shoddy, and it's painfully obvious to anyone who has even the slightest bit of knowledge at all about cast iron. Um, they have taken Lodge pans, for instance, and put the Wapik Indian head logo on them and tried to pass them off as the Wapik Indian head. But if you know the Wapik Indian head, you know, again, the handle shape is different. So, no, that's obviously not it. Likewise, there are very sloppy attempts to put the Griswold logo on other kinds of pans. So, um, most counterfeits are like that. Most are very easy to spot. The other thing about reproduction is I would call it pretty much on a case by case basis because again, it takes effort, it takes resources, and it takes it's not easy to put out any kind of a cast iron pan, whether it's a counterfeit or otherwise. So that's why, in a lot of instances, I would not call something a reproduction, even if some people would call it a reproduction. There is a rumor I've heard that claims there is a Chinese imitation of the Lodge Wildlife Series deer head skillet. The wildlife series that had the duck, the dog, the deer, and the fish. And there's are claims that there's a Chinese imitation of that. And I don't believe it for that reason. Apparently, there is a pan out there that looks identical to the Lodge deer pan, and maybe there might be a very, very slight difference in the design of the nose or the eyes or something like that. So, no, that's ridiculous. A counterfeiter would not make such an incredible effort and have only that slight difference. So, no, I don't believe that there is a counterfeit of that kind. Likewise, yeah, there is a very famous, not very famous, but it's pretty well known. There are gate marked Erie skillets, as you know. That of course on eBay and at antique malls they try to pass them off as genuine Griswold, and they're not. And we know the reason why. I know there are folks here who know that foundries like Wappick, for instance, used cast off and discarded Erie and Griswold molds and patterns to make their own pans, nice and cheap that way. Hold on, trouble. Come on, Trouble. We don't want you. I'm not going to have you climbing it again. Y- Sorry, Trouble. I'm not going to have you climbing up those curtains. Anyway, but yeah, and as you know, they were cheaply made and roughly made, and it comes out that you've got a pan with the Erie logo and a big gate mark going down the side. No, I do not think those were counterfeits. I think they were just that. They were simply cheap pans made on the cheap. Trouble, come on. Hold on one second. Here we go again. Oh, yeah, he's in one of his moods. Anyway, so no, those are not. Yeah, I would hope most collectors would know a recast. Yes. So, yep, yeah. I'm maybe you even heard that. Hold on. Hi, Trouble. Yeah, hi. Say hi. Anyway, back to where I was. But yeah, no, as I said, those are not counterfeits. They're only recasts and cheaply made. So, Cielo 1995. I have a 10-inch double Baylor unmarked Dutch oven. Smooth bottom. I bet that is actually a Japanese nabe rice cooker, especially if it is enameled on the outside. Or is it on the inside? Actually, no, I think it's the other way around. Enameled on the inside and bare on the outside. I've seen those at Chinese markets. Just that it's a rice cooker from Japan, and they usually have wooden lids to go on top for steaming the rice. Very pretty too. So that would be my guess. The However, yeah, we also have to consider the law of averages, and that is quite simply if it's not made by Lodge Cast Iron, then chances are it's made in Asia. So, because just that, Lodge is the only major cast iron manufacturer in the US. So, if it's not a Lodge, it's probably from Asia. So, for whatever that's worth. A company in Niagara Falls. Oh, ACS. Okay. What type of Dutch oven is next to the griddle on the floor? Oh, you're talking about here in the background? Okay. I guess you're probably referring to this one. It's not a Dutch oven. Ugh, it's a fire starter. These kind that they sometimes sell these as cauldrons, but it's actually a fire starter because it has a soapstone wand. And the idea is you fill this thing with kerosene, you put this thing in for, I don't know, an hour or so, and it will absorb the liquid, and then you can actually set this thing on fire, and then there you go. It's a campfire starter, but that's exactly what this is. It's not a Dutch oven. And especially because it was made with, it has kerosene in it, and I could still smell it. There's no kerosene in it now, but there was, and I can still smell it. I would not want to cook food in this for that reason. On the other hand, it's good for burning things. So anyway, I'm hoping that's what you were referring to. So, keep on going. Papa Dan, the BSR S pans are smaller than regular size pans. That's true. This 5S is the size of a 4. Yes. 7S is the size of a 6. That's absolutely true. It was a marketing move to sell those pans. So they sold them with the BSR Sportsman grill. Well, I did not know that. I had heard a number of times that they were actually meant to fit the same size as a competitor's skillets, but nobody seems to know who the competitor was. That's again, this is all based on history, so you might be right. I might be wrong. On a good note, I'm going to San Diego in a couple of weeks to do some hunting in the wild. Nice. I'm presuming, are you talking about cast iron hunting or animal hunting? Well, either way, have fun. That's the best I could say there. So you just have a laid back vibe of a fellow I used to work with. Okay. And still going, would like to see some gate mark pans if you got any. Yes, I do, as a matter of fact. I guess there's a good excuse to bring out one of my favorites. You want to see a gate mark pan? Here we are. And I call this pan lucky for a couple of reasons. This is, in fact, a number 7 size pan because, yeah, like it says, it has the number 7 right here on the handle. This handle, of course, is very easy and very distinctive and was used by a number of manufacturers in the 19th century. So these things are pretty common. And so, of course, this is lucky number 7. Naturally, I call that. The other reason why I call this lucky is because when I originally got this pan, it had a really big crack on the inside. And I actually took the time to have it welded. I had 2 gate mark pans, in fact, that were welded. And I just felt like I wanted to have them repaired. I didn't want to just get rid of them. And so because of that, this is definitely lucky because it's back to life. It's welded. It's probably going to last, well, probably the rest of my life. And again, that's why I call this pan lucky. I have a couple of other gate mark pans, including my number 9 size fancy handle pan. I have a couple of those gate mark griddles now that I was trying to use as a lid for that BSR fish fryer. Um, oh, and of course, I have my big cast iron cauldron too. I think that's all I have for gate marks. I actually don't have very many, but I do have a few. And yeah, for the most part, I've used old Lucky here, especially as a cornbread pan. He does great cornbread. I really like making cornbread in this pan. It's just the right size too for a nice batch of cornbread. I only have 4 gate marks, says Cynthia Wesley. Grills. Okay, you might want to get that checked. Holy cow, we're actually going on an hour and 37 minutes? Wow. Okay. Yeah, my wife says I look like I had a stroke. My right side is drooping. What? Corey? Okay. Corey, if that's what you're doing, yeah, get that checked. Okay, but I'm gonna keep on the subject tonight. I have some cracked items I would love to have repaired for display pieces. How did they weld it? Um, I my understanding is they use nickel welds, and I lucked out as far as having this thing repaired. In that, I actually found a professional welder who did independent jobs on the side, and he did a great job welding this thing too. So that even so, the marking, the weld is still very noticeable and very obvious. Oh, sorry about that. But I certainly don't have any complaints about that because it does a good job. Welding cast iron is not easy. And if you look on YouTube, you will see there are a number of videos about welding cast iron. I've actually had a number of welding companies refuse to weld cast iron for that reason because it's too easy to crack. It's brittle. It can crack. and it could be damaged rather than repaired. So I lucked out in finding that guy who welded it. In most instances, I don't know if I'm ever even going to do that again. If I find a cracked pan, I'm probably just going to give it up as lost for that reason because it's not worth it in most instances. Either they would charge a sky high price for it or they might just simply not do it at all. So, okay, Wapik Indian Head Dutch Oven, never seen another one. Saw number 7, but it was cracked, but it didn't have the original like mine does. Yeah, cracked pans become baking pans. Well, there is that, yes. The risk, of course, is that repeatedly heating and cooling the pan could cause the crack to expand. So, the best I could say is that if you're going to use it at your own risk. So, yeah, I haven't been able to find anyone to weld them. Yes, exactly. That's the point. So, I'm sorry to say. All right. We are actually getting on here, and as usual, pretty much, I didn't expect it would be going on this long. So, it pains me to see folks using number 10s for planters. Well, yeah, there is that too, and that I especially hate to see Dutch ovens with holes punched in them, so that they would be used as planters. But alas, I've come across a number of them. I've come across Griswolds with the large logo on them with those holes punched in them for planters. So I'm sorry to say about that. They have cast rods. You have to heat the pan before the weld. So, but again, as I said, we're getting on here now, and it is still a work night. It's a Thursday night, and Friday is tomorrow, thank goodness. So, I'm saying, I mean, I'm glad that this thing went on for so long. Every time I do one of these things, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to last, but I seem to have no trouble at all just talking on and on and on about cast iron. Yeah, am I obsessed or what? So. But nonetheless, though, yeah, temperature is a big issue when welding. So I came across a Wapik converted into a clock. Well, maybe it might have previously been broken already because, yes, I've seen a number of pans made into clocks. And now they're getting into the latest thing, of course, of making spatulas. You know, they're taking cracked pans and cutting them up and making spatulas out of them. This I think these spatulas have only been going on for the last few years. I can't recall ever seeing anything about so-called vintage spatulas made in that way. They're all new. I think it only started just recently. And these spatulas are popular because they are selling for high prices now. In some instances, they're selling even more than the original pans. And I have seen instances already where they are taking perfectly good pans and cutting them up into making them into those spatulas because they sell more that way. We're talking Lodge pans, probably not unmarked Wagner's as well. I have seen those made into spatulas. Yes. So, well, again, it's their cast iron and they can do whatever they want with it. I mean, if they end up ruining a perfectly good vintage pan just to make it into a spatula, well, so be it, because there's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. I mean, and yeah, and on the other hand, it might be nice to own one of those spatulas. Just try it out and see what a hard cast iron spatula is like. Although, as I said, they're selling them at high prices. I'm not going to pay that. I'm a cheapskate. So if I ever come across a bargain on one of those spatulas, maybe. Otherwise, no. Okay, yeah, they usually make them out of cracked pans anyway. Yes, exactly. I have a Dutch oven that we have our name cut out in. Well, we only did that because it went through an RV wreck and tore a leg off. Wow. So that's definitely an heirloom, that's for sure. Yeah, that way you can show that off to your family and say, well, there's an interesting story behind that. Oh, you meant tore a leg off of the pan. Thank goodness. I thought you meant it actually tore somebody's leg off. Ooh. So yeah. But yeah. Um and yeah, really, it's like, well, I mean, if you can continue using it, then go ahead and do it. That's the reason why there are a lot of 19th century spiders out there that have these tiny little stubs on the bottom. Because as you know, there were a lot of fireplace skillets with the long legs, and a lot of people had the legs cut off so that they could continue using them on the newer wood burning stovetops. And well, that was all done decades ago and even more than 100 years ago. So what's done is done. I guess we can only consider it a piece of history if we come across one like that. I made a 90s griddle that was severely warped into a spatula. I love it for flipping anything on the grill. I bought two, cheap and early, a Griswold large logo number 6 and a favorite number 9. Did you see my comment about your square skillet? Okay. All right. I seen one for sale as well, all three legs cut off. As I said, that may very well have been done long in the past. So I'm going to assume innocent until proven guilty. I am not saying that any vendor intentionally cut the legs off of a vintage antique spider. More likely, as I said, that was probably done way in the past by someone who wanted to keep using it on a stove. I hope. All right. We are getting on in time, but yes, Hello Val's Black Cats rules as well. A lot of good ideas for finding cast iron. And as I said, besides, it's a work night anyway, and I am going to have to start wrapping up so that I can start getting ready for bed too. So, but yeah, these things here, as I said, I'm making this a monthly thing. The first week of every month. This should have been cast iron Wednesday, but like I said, that was postponed. So thank you very much to everybody for showing up tonight as well. But yeah, I'm trying to do this once per month because, well, it gives us something to talk about. And also it's fun. I like these discussions, and I can only hope that you do as well. So what are we seeing here? Oh yeah, that. Yeah, unhide a comment here. There we go. And yeah, these are, I mean, they really passed the time. As I said, this time went by a lot faster than I expected. So, and as I said every week as well, the reason why the time goes by so fast is because you folks. I enjoy this. This is a lot of fun. And it's your comments and your conversation and questions and answers and everything that makes this so much fun, because I want this to be more of a two-way thing. I mean, yeah, I'm the one showing off all of this cast iron on video here because it's my channel, but it's not. I'm not the dictator of this channel. As I said, I encourage everybody here to have fun because that's really the best part of it. And yeah, I enjoy it too. Thank you very much to Brian Anderson, and thank you to everybody here. Richard Lusk and Cielo 1995, Cynthia Wesley, R. Hughes, and Debbie and everybody else. I can only thank everybody really for showing up here, whether it's for the first time or for coming back week after week, because I guess that means I'm actually entertaining you, and that's really good because it's a lot of fun for me, and I'm glad to see that it's a lot of fun for you as well. And so, thank you once again, everybody. We will continue this once again. Next week, of course, is the week before Valentine's Day. And I'm going to be digging up and breaking out that heart shaped Dutch oven next Wednesday. So, we've got that to look forward to. So, thank you once again to everybody for showing up. Hi, Trouble. Stop clawing at that chair. And everybody, just have a good night, folks. Keep warm. We've got this cold snap going through. And until then, see you all next Wednesday.